Hello, good day. As I spoke to you, we are going to discuss some of the few things involved in AKU Class 8. And if you are doing AKU Class 8, then there are some things that you need to know and you need to understand well. And we are going to discuss them right now. So, because your exams are around the corner, so this will also help you in the exam. So the first thing that, and going to class 9, I mean, these concepts are useful in class 9 as well. So let us just quickly go over them. The first thing, of course, is related to demand. And when you are talking about demand, then you need to understand the law of demand. So what does the law of demand say? That is something that you need to know. The law of demand says that when the price increases, the quantity demanded of a product will go down because there's an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. The other thing that you need to understand is price elasticity of demand. So what is what's the difference between demand and price elasticity of demand? That's something that you need to know. You need to know the difference. You need to know the definition, the definitional differences. All right. While demand is the desire to have a product backed by the ability to do so, elasticity is the responsiveness. Please do keep in mind that whenever the price increases, quantity demanded will fall of all the products, but the level of the fall in quantity demanded will be less if the product is price inelastic. Please keep that in mind. That's the law of demand. Sometimes students say when the price increases, quantity demanded does not fall. That's the wrong answer. You will not get marks for that. It's the proportion of the change. If the product is price elastic, for an increase in price, the proportion of quantity demanded, the proportion of the change in quantity demanded is going to be high. And if the product is inelastic, then for an increase in price, there's going to be a very little fall in quantity demanded. All right, so please do keep that difference in mind. How do you define elasticity? It's the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. The proportion is the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a given change in price. You need to know what a price elastic product is. You need to know what a price inelastic product is. Then, of course, you need to know extension and contraction of supply. That's now trite. We've been doing it for a long time, but extension, whenever there is a movement along the curve because of a fall in price, the quantity demanded rises. This is an extension of demand. When the price increases and quantity demanded falls, this is a contraction of demand. Then, of course, we talk about the different concepts which are included in this chapter. One of the concepts that comes across, what is it? It's think about the demand curve again. When the price changes, quantity demanded changes. When the price increases, quantity demanded falls. But is price the only factor in the market? Of course not. There are other factors. So what are we doing? We are keeping those other factors constant. When you keep those other factors constant, this is called ceteris paribus. Ceteris paribus simply means all other things held constant. All right. What are the factors that affect supply? Supply. Now think of supply. The upward sloping curve. Okay. The upward slope means that there is a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. All right. So what are the factors? It's very simple. What are the factors that affect supply? Any factor that has an impact on the cost of production is going to affect supply, because the producer wants more profit. So when the cost rises, his willingness to supply falls because now he perceives a lesser profit. So what is the cost of production? If the cost of production goes up, supply of the product will fall. When the taxes go up, supply of the product will fall. All right. So keep those things in mind. What are the factors that have an impact on supply? Okay. Please keep in mind that these factors will lead to a shift in the supply curve. Okay. They will lead to a shift in the supply curve. Right. because a movement along the curve, along the supply curve, will only take place when there is ceteris paribus, only change in price takes place. But when the other factors change, cost of production changes, technology, another very important factor. If technology improves, the supply curve will shift outwards, which means that at every price level, the supply will increase. Why? Because technology leads to reduction in cost of production. It is increase in cost one time. The investment will increase the cost one time, but then output is going to increase. Supply is going to. Another thing that will increase the supply is subsidy. If the government provides subsidy, then again that leads to a reduction in the cost of production. So please do keep those things in mind. Okay. If you're given a price, if you're given a supply schedule, you'll be given on the exam, you'll be given the price and the quantity supplied. You can easily plot the price against the quantity supplied and derive the supply curve. Another thing which is important, and this is coming towards the end of the SLOs, is the GDP and the GDP per capita. So what is the GDP? The GDP is gross domestic product, which is the market value of all the goods and services produced within the confines of a country, and simply when you divide it by the population you get the GDP. But please look up the exact definitions for the exam purpose, because the examiner is expecting exact definitions from you. All right, now what are the components of GDP? And that brings us to macroeconomic policy. What is the government trying to achieve? Okay, there are several: employment, growth. The government tries to increase the GDP, and that will be shown that all these factors are related to. Keep in mind, if there is growth in the economy, unemployment will fall. That's another macroeconomic objective. So when GDP increases, unemployment will fall, and when GDP decreases, unemployment usually rises. Standard of living, yes, when GDP is decreasing, the standard of living of some people will fall, but the standard of living will increase, or it will become better when GDP increases. Inflation rises. That is why the governments need to control inflation when GDP is rising. The inflation will rise when the GDP rises because of demand pull. Inflation, demand is going to lead to more exports. The balance of payment situation will improve. Exports will rise. So these are some of the things. Now let's talk about disposable income. When you are talking about disposable, the word that should come to your mind is tax. Tax adjusted. When you're talking about real income, the thing that should come to your mind is inflation adjusted. Okay, so when I'm talking about real income, I'm talking about inflation adjusted income. Then I'm talking about disposable income. I'm talking about income that you will get after paying your taxes. Within tax, then there is progressive tax, regressive tax, proportional tax. Progressive taxes are those taxes which are imposed on the basis of if, let's say, the people are earning more, then they will pay a higher rate of tax. The rate of tax will go up. In a regressive tax system, if the people are earning more, they will fall in a lower tax bracket. So do keep that in mind. You must know the difference between things like GDP and GNP and NNP. All right, GDP, I've already told you. GDP is what? GDP is basically what you are producing within the country. Okay, what is GNP? All right, so GNP is what the country is producing, total value of the goods and services being produced in the country, but it also includes any income earned by residents from overseas investments, what people are earning overseas, that is also included in GNP. So let's say it is Pakistan, and in Pakistan people are making goods in the country, and outside the country Pakistanis are also producing. So what the income that they are earning outside the country, that will be added to the GDP, and you will get the GNP. In NNP, it's the same as the GNP minus the capital consumption or the what is called depreciation. So if you write capital consumption or depreciation, it will be regarded as the same thing. So this is something that you need to know, the difference between the three. Then there is the four functions of money. Money is the last, toward the end of the SLOs, you will find the chapter on money. Money has four functions. Money is a store of value, money is a measure of value, money is a method of deferred payment, money is a medium of exchange. So these are the four things, but usually at class 8 level, because there are no MCQs, so you are going to, there will be some MCQs, you will have to give a one-line explanation on what these things are. Then you need to know what stock is and how it differs from the supply. All right, the stock is what is produced and kept. It is produced, it's not yet sent to the market. As long as the produced product is in the hands of the producer and it has not been sent out in the market, it's stock. Once it is sent out in the market, the stock becomes the supply. Okay, you should then know, as we have already discussed, there are some factors that lead to shift in the supply curve. Likewise, there are some factors that lead to a shift in the demand curve. Now, what are they? All right, these are non-price factors. Please do keep in mind: income, taste, lifestyle, there are other factors, availability of substitutes, all these things. And plus, because this may come as a subjective answer, you need to give some explanation for this as to how these things happen. You must know, as I said, substitutes. You must know what a substitute is, what a complement is. A substitute is a product which performs the same function. It performs the same function. That's why two substitutes will not be jointly demanded. You will not take tea in one hand and coffee in one hand and drink one sip of tea, sip tea from one hand and sip coffee from the other. No, if one is demanded, the other will not be demanded. And complementary goods are those goods which you can do without the other if you have one. So complementary goods are jointly demanded. I mean, you can have a car, but if you don't have the fuel to run it, then it's useless. So fuel and car are jointly demanded. Socks and shoes are jointly demanded. Milk and tea are jointly demanded. So these are complementary goods. Okay. So and one thing that you need to know is what happens in the market for a product where price changes, and because of that supply curve shifts in another market. Let me give you an example. Let's say the price of coffee goes up. So what's going to happen? There's going to be no shift in the demand curve. Price has gone up. Citrus paribus. So what will you do? You will take a movement, you will show a movement along the curve, and price goes up, quantity demanded comes down. Okay, I'm deliberately not drawing the graph. I don't want to. Think about this in your head. There's a downward sloping demand curve. You are here at a lower point and the price rises. When the price rises, you move along the curve, go to a higher point, and quantity demanded falls. Now, when the quantity demanded of coffee, when the quantity demanded of coffee falls, these people who are consuming coffee, they have to consume something else. So what will they do? They will simply switch to tea. Now the price of tea hasn't changed, but because of a change in price of coffee, more customers have come in tea. So what's going to happen? At the same price level, no change in price, the demand for tea goes up. So it's going to be a rightward shift in the demand curve for tea, and a movement along the curve in the demand curve for coffee. All right. Let me also quickly discuss with you some examples of the multiple choice questions. Listen, the multiple choice questions come from the same chapters. The chapter are not going to be different. You have to know what citrus paribus is. You have to know what demand is. You have to know what leads to a shift in the curve. Okay, price is the factor that will not lead to a shift in the curve. Other factors, income, taste, substitutes, they might. Elasticity of demand, think about the elasticity of demand. All right, think of its definition. What is the definition of elasticity of demand? That can come. Okay, you will have to look at a particular product and tell the examiner whether it is price inelastic, whether it's a given good, whether it's a, I told you what a given good was. Given good is a product which defies the law of demand. So let's take the example of tea, or let's take the example of cigarette. What is cigarette? Is it price inelastic? Is it price elastic? You'll have to think, for a change in price, will there be a greater change in quantity demanded or less change in quantity demanded? Okay, then of course, if the curve is downward sloping, what kind of relationship is it? Is it upward sloping? What kind of relationship is it? Again, stock. Things are the same, they're just being asked in a different style. What happens when the cost of production increases? When the cost of production increases, what happens to supply? More units of a good is consumed. What happens to marginal utility? Of course, marginal utility goes down when more products are consumed. Total utility goes up. All right, and what are free goods? Okay, what are public goods? Okay, what are merit goods? So public goods are those goods that are jointly owned and they are good for consumption and they are non-excludable and non-rivalous, whereas merit goods are excludable and rivalous. So these are the things that you will have to keep in mind. Also, what else can you expect? You can expect again a schedule. Okay, you can expect a schedule, and let's say if opportunity cost. Please keep in mind, often opportunity cost is related to the prevailing interest rate. All right, and obviously a rational consumer will try to earn an interest which is higher than his opportunity cost. Okay, if the opportunity cost is higher but the interest that you are earning is less, you're not going to go for it. You're going to go for a situation where you are getting more interest and your opportunity cost is less. Okay, again, as I said, the objective, the macroeconomic objective of the government is important. The examiner likes to ask about it, and all things should improve. Inflation should be low. The government wants to keep the inflation low. All right, whenever the examiner says the revenue of the government, please keep in mind he's talking about tax. The revenue of the government is called tax, and usually in the third world countries, my personal opinion is that this may work, may not work, but in the third world countries, progressive taxation is considered to be a good way of fighting poverty. Okay, what is absolute poverty? The definition you should know. It is a situation where people are not able to afford the necessities of life. And please keep, yes, in money, people get confused. People think that money is only paper money. Okay, no, money can be paper money, it can be plastic money, it can be metal money. Only in today's world you will not have any leather money, though at one time it was possible. Money, the features of money, there's one thing functions of money, there's one thing features of money. Some of the features of money are, it should be durable, it should be portable, and it should be divisible. There are other features as well, but for our purpose, these three features are enough: durable, portable, divisible. Okay, and as I already said, we know what GDP is, we know what GNP is, we know what disposable income is. So we know this. Please keep in mind that the Association of Countries for Economic Cooperation in South Asia, including India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Maldives, and Sri Lanka, this organization is called SAARC, S-A-A-R-C, and it's a very good way of fighting poverty. Another old organization which existed, which represented the original industrialized nation. It was called G7, and the G7 used to include USA, UK, Japan, Germany, France, Canada, and Italy. USA, UK, Japan, Germany, France, Canada, Italy. Please keep in mind, Russia was not there, China was not there, these countries were not there in the beginning. Italians were there, Canadians were there, French were there. All right, the country with the highest GDP in the world today is the United States of America. It was the situation then when they formed the G7. And one way that nations increase GDP is by increasing trade. And finally, one very important problem which nations face, because of which the entire system of economics exists, is scarcity. Okay, so this is in a nutshell. I've discussed the most important topics in AKU EB class 8, and these same topics will become very important in class 9 as well. So please do study them very carefully and please try to learn them. Okay, I hope this was useful. Thank you very much.